Andreas Krieg is a Middle East risk and security analyst. He's also Associate Professor in Security Studies at King's College London. Welcome to DW. There have been rumours of deals that failed for weeks. Why do you think it has taken so long to reach this agreement?
Hi, I think it's the same deal that we've been talking about and has been in the pipeline for the last couple of weeks. It's not a new deal, and it's not like that other deals or other mediation failed in the meantime. I think the circumstances have changed. I think 3 weeks ago we had a very solid commitment from Hamas to commit to a very similar deal, but at the time it was the Israeli government who rejected it, despite the advice from security services inside Israel to actually accept it. I think the IDF obviously made some slow progress on the ground, which also meant that the IDF understands now how difficult the operational environment is. There's a realization also that there is no military solution to actually get the hostages out, but only a diplomatic one. And lastly, I think what is an important factor here is that the Israeli street, the public, has put a lot of pressure on the Netanyahu government to bring the hostages home. So the pressure internally in Israel on the government to do anything and everything they can to bring them back has grown, and I think continues to grow. And I think the government now had to make a concession and did so to get the hostages home.
It's really interesting. So essentially, same deal, different circumstances. Just walk us then through the past few weeks. How did they get here? How was this agreement reached? Now, it was always about an exchange for humanitarian aid on one hand, and a humanitarian ceasefire, and on the other hand, a release of hostages. And it was a tit for tat. So Hamas was saying, we're going to give you hostages and you give us humanitarian aid and humanitarian pauses. It was always about trying to find the middle ground where it is acceptable in terms of what Israel has to give up to get the hostages back. And that bargaining has been, going back and forth. There were a lot of strategic disagreements to begin with on whether there should be any sort of bargaining with Hamas, and particularly those on the far right of the Netanyahu government said there should be no negotiation with Hamas. And then as we moved forward, it became clear that Israel was willing to make concessions, but then it was more about the logistics of things. The problem here is Hamas wanted to get prisoners in return. The question of what was the swap? Now, I think the deal that we're seeing now is 1 to 3 in terms of in terms of people that are being released. So if Hamas gives up 50, Israel has to give up 150 prisoners. And also, there's been an issue of the kind of logistical side of things. If you think about, there's an ongoing war zone where it's very difficult to actually get hostages out when operations are ongoing and when obviously Israeli drones are above. So Hamas wanted to make sure that Israel is not flying drones, is not doing reconnaissance to kind of give away their positions as they're releasing the hostages. So that was there were a lot of sticking points there. And now the sticking point is, when does it actually come into effect? When does the IDF have a good position to say, now we can have a couple of days of a ceasefire or a humanitarian pause and feel comfortable that it can go forward? Right. And on that point, what do you think is likely to happen at the end of the first 4-day pause in fighting?
Now, Qatar as a mediator is trying to build up on a very small agreement and kind of building it up and up and up. The idea is that every additional day that Israel is granting a humanitarian pause, Hamas will give up more hostages. So it's a kind of tit for tat in that respect. So the hope is that it will not end after 3, 4, 5 days, but there will be an additional day and an additional day. But that all depends on whether all sides can keep their feet still. I mean, the problem that we have in particular with Hamas is that it's not a humanitarian actor, right? It's a network of different actors. And even if the strategic leadership says we're committing to the ceasefire, do these different fighting factions who are loosely affiliated with the core of Hamas, will they actually consider and respect the ceasefire, or will there be any tactical moves on the ground that the IDF will not tolerate? And what are these kind of moves? What are the red lines? So if we see a repositioning, for example, of some groups on the ground, will the IDF then respond to that? What is a military advantage? What is not? So it's a lot of smaller tactical things that can really escalate and bring the humanitarian pause and the momentum to an end.
OK, thank you for talking us through that so clearly. Middle East risk and security analyst Andreas Krieg from King's College. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, with this proposed truce imminent, humanitarian